your host, J.S. Garrett, and I am here with Brian Barrett to discuss an article that he wrote called Offices of the Jinn. How you doing, Brian?
Very well, thanks for the interview. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I really enjoy doing these podcast interviews, and I find that it is hard to find people who interview well and that also know what they're talking about and give out good content. And so when I read your article, I definitely wanted to have you on. I mean, you actually went out to an ancient temple and had some pretty cool experiences with that. And so yeah, it sounds like you've researched the Jinn quite a bit, and it's definitely a subject that I'm very interested in. So yeah, I mean, can you tell us first a little bit about how you got started, how you began your research?
Okay, how I began my research is obviously I was in India, and being an occultist, you talk to other occultists. Now it's very interesting. I spoke to a very high adept, and all she says the Jinn are aggravated children. They always causing mischief. Yeah. However, then when you look deeper, there are Jinn masters who allow them free reign. People pay vast amounts of money to have their wishes granted. So, now we're talking India, we're not talking a lot of money, we're talking people probably paying the equivalent of 6 months' wages to get a wish.
Wow.
So, these guys are paying money because they know these Jinn masters can give them exactly what they want. And that will include killing people. So, there is a very dark side to the Jinn as well, so to speak. However, there's a very good side to the Jinn because they can heal, they can also grant you your wishes, and they can also give you extreme peace, which is quite unusual. Many people will go to the Jinn when they are absolutely shattered with everything else, and they'll say to the Jinn, look at me, I'm overworked, I'm overtired, what can you do? And whoosh, they're back to normal. Incredible. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty potent, especially when you get into like healing physical ailments and things like that. When you come across an entity that can do that, I mean, they are manipulating physical mass on a subatomic level, which the power that would take to be able to do something like that is incredible. So I really don't think that even most people that work with these entities fully grasp the level of power that they have. So
no, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, what we're dealing with, JS, is a entity which has free will. It comes and goes how it likes. Now, in the temple, they were binded, and you could feel they were binded, but only in the sense of a spring on a Rottweiler. Because I can tell you a very daunting story. A woman, young girl, student, came to the temple sort of a couple of years ago and was saying, oh yeah, Robin Williams, Blue Genie, Robin Williams, Blue Genie. And she climbed to the top of the temple to touch the pillar. Before she could touch the pillar, all the eyewitnesses said a Jinn threw her to the floor, physically, and they saw, so they are not to be messed with, sort of like, she went there thinking it was all a big joke, and she never left. So, so we're dealing with something very powerful. Yeah. Even when they're founded, that they can still break the bind. So, sort of. However, on the other side of it, poor Indians, every Tuesday, every Thursday, go there and wish. And if they want their wishes to come true, they will pay obscene amounts of money and they get their wishes. So as you said, you know, that these can change physical matter. When you read all the stories about them, they change physical matter. So they are very unusual, very, very unusual. For example, I saw on YouTube a very deluded person saying, I'm going to call a Jinn. And I'm thinking, this is going to be interesting. It was just some guy on some channel, and I'm watching it. And he says, I'm going to ask it to put out flames. And I'm sat there praying, saying, I really hope you don't get a Jinn, because putting out flames is really so low on the thing. But luckily, he spent about an hour and got nothing. Yeah, you know, sort of. I spent 5 minutes with the Jinn master, and I said, can you make one appear? And he said, look into the smoke, and a face came out.
Wow.
And went away, and I was like, oh, okay, yes.
Like, oh, okay. Very real. Yeah, I've got some pretty still shot pictures that my wife has taken of me doing ritual, and once in a while we get a very vivid face in the flames or in the smoke, and that always still, no matter how many times that happens, it trips me out. But it's awesome though, because it gives you, you know, I think as magicians, we need constant validation in order to keep our sanity with some of the crazy things that we do, some of the crazy rituals that we perform. And yeah, seeing something physically or feeling something physically touch you, I mean, once that happens, there's no more doubt left in the magician's head that they are working with something very real, physically real. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, other Jinn that what we understand as demons, I think some are, some aren't. Yeah, okay. I think it's, if you like, there's a football table of Jinn. At the top, you've got the really, you know, the only word you can say for them is the Supremes, which essentially the Ifrit, the Shaitan, and the Ifrit will work with humans only if they get what they want from the human. The Shaitan, realistically, you never hear of him coming anywhere near humans. I think we don't even rate on his scale. The Ifrit is about as high as we can get with these guys. The Ifrit is your classic genie in the bottle. Your Ifrit is your, if you read the Hindu tales, it's always the Ifrit that appears and challenges people. Now, when you read the old stories, they're not just appearing to magicians, they're appearing to everybody. And not only that, they're saying, you know, come back here and I'll be here. And they bring their friends with them and they write, you can see them. So they can physically materialize at will.
yeah.
So, you know, I hope that gives you some kind of focus as to what they're like.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you think that these creatures are they trans-dimensional beings that have physical bodies on the next dimension over, or are they solid here on this dimension and they just kind of materialize in and out of solidity at will?
I think you're absolutely right with the second one, and I'll explain to you why. When I went to Bezelkota, I didn't go on a Tuesday or a Thursday. I went on a Sunday because I wanted to go when it was quiet, because I wanted to, if I was going to have any form of experience, I wanted it to be virtually by myself and my wife. We were just walking around. Now, the car park where you buy your ticket is enormous. It's probably the size of a couple of basketball pitches. Yeah. I walked there by myself, and I got to the hut, and I bought tickets for my wife and myself. And while I was there, this young guy said, "Oh, you're going in to see the Jinn?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go in to see the Jinn." He said, "I'll see you in there." I said, "Oh, great." Paid the guy the money, turned round, no guy. Okay, no guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you know, I thought maybe, you know, you can be a little bit tied up. Maybe I was longer taking taking the money. But anyway, sort of like we looked all the way around the temple, we looked around the mosque, and when I was coming out, he appeared from nowhere again, and he said, "Did you see the Jinn?" And I said, "Well, my wife did, I didn't." And he said, oh. He said, "Can you take a photograph of me and my girlfriend?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And he gave me his camera, and I took a picture and gave him the camera back. And then we turned round to go out the gate, which was sort of like a good half a mile. And I turned round after about 4 or 5 steps, no guy. So
that's interesting. Yeah, I'm interested to see the picture.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's his camera. I'm not going to swear to it, but the other interesting thing, which I think you will find quite fascinating, both I felt it and my wife. I took my wife as the canary in the mine, so to speak, because obviously being a magician, etc., etc., ever so excited, I could be over enthusiastic. Yeah, okay. However, we were walking around and we both said the same thing: extreme peace. Very, very peaceful. Yeah, nothing was aggressive, nothing was hurtful towards us. The animals were super tame. They would come up to you like pets. Yeah, you know, everything was super tame, and the peace was out of this world. It was otherworldly. Yeah. And when we came away, we both spoke about the peace. I don't know what you think of that, but I was so surprised. Seriously, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, do you think it's the presence of the Jinn in that area that brought that extreme peace?
Yeah, I think so. I think that they want somewhere where they can have harmony, and possibly because I'm a magician, I was allowed to experience that harmony, and my wife with me. Yeah, but it was harmony. Yeah, there was nothing threatening about it. I was expecting the whole brimstone and sulfur thing. Nothing could be further from the truth. Just extremely quiet, extremely peaceful. Everything was harmonious. Like I said, animals were coming up like tame cats. You know, it was ridiculous. You know, sort of like the power that was there. You know, that's the only way I can describe it. That their power.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's really interesting about the animals. I noticed since I started practicing hardcore ritual magic that I have a lot of crazy encounters with wild animals. Well, they would behave like you were describing in a tame manner. Like I've actually had like wild foxes and things like that come up to me and let me pet them, or I've actually got pictures on my Facebook of me holding a fox in my arms. And you know, same thing with, you know, serpents, birds, things like that. And so I'm always kind of wondering, like, are the spirits possessing these animals in order to interact with me physically? Because I'll notice whenever I encounter an animal that is extremely tame, that normally would not be, it's almost like the animal is in some type of trance. And you can see the spiritual influence on that creature. And you know, whenever I have an encounter like that, it typically ends in some type of ritual to do with that creature. It's always mind-blowing. Always learn a phenomenal amount from that. So I mean, do you think those could have been the Jinn possessing those animals to interact with you?
I think it's definitely, yes, on a spiritual level, and I'll explain to you why. In the accounts of Solomon, as well as being given power over the jinns and the demons, he's also taught the language of animals. Yeah. Now, you're obviously a very high magician, and I think that this is part and parcel of it. You can talk to the jinn or the demons, and in turn, the animals are given to you, the language of the animals. And like the historical evidence of Solomon is there, and I experienced it within the temple, and you're experiencing it when you're working ritually. So, you know, because Solomon is not his real name. The real name was Jebediah. The Solomon, according to a lot of esoterics, is just sun and moon to explain how he was. So he was given this gift from God to communicate to the animals. I think the God, if you like, is a kind of a generic explanation. He was given this gift, or he found this gift within himself. When he communicated with the creatures of all creatures communicated with him. You know, the barrier was gone, so to speak. And I think that is deeply significant, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, a lot of the work that I do is well, after I started having these initial encounters with wild animals that were so bizarre that it definitely got my attention, and I knew that it had to be connected to the magic that I was doing. And so what I started doing was evoking what I call the master spirit of those creatures. So like, you know, the idea is that there is a current, that the current of that species, the energetic current that flows through this reality that is causing the physical manifestation of that species on this physical plane. And so that current has a consciousness. This is just how I understand it. And so when you evoke or invoke the master spirit of that creature, you are tapping into the God consciousness of that species and their current. And when you do that, you can tap into the power of that species and work with those spirits and experiment and get to know what that energy is useful for in magic. And anytime I would do this, I would end up having an encounter with that creature on a regular basis after the ritual. You know, there would be the initial encounter where the creature would get my attention, and I began doing these rituals with the spirits of that creature. And it's like I would see them and be approached by them everywhere I would go. And so, yeah, there's definitely something to it. I've never really understood it. It's one of the things I've been trying to figure out most of my adult life. So, yeah, that's pretty cool to hear your take on that.
Well, the actual quote is Solomon's sovereignty over the animal kingdom can be derived reasonably in straightforward manner from the biblical verses such as Kings 5:13. He spoke also of beast and fowl, and of creeping things and of fishes. So, you know, I mean, sort of like, you know, once he was given this gift to speak to the demons, he then learned the language of the animals. And I think it's just that simple. Because you can communicate with the spirit, you can communicate with the animal. It's part of your gift, so to speak.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah. So I had a question, something that you said a few minutes ago. You were talking about, you know, how people in India would pay obscene amounts of money to these Jinn masters to have their very specific wish granted. And so I was just wondering, what do they typically offer the Jinn in exchange for this work, if you know?
Okay, right. If it's an Ifrit, essentially the Ifrit thrive on killing, to put it bluntly. So the deal would be quite simple. You do this, I'll give you somebody to kill. They don't kill them clean. They will destroy their lives. They will make them into an alcoholic. They'll make them into a drug addict. They will make them spend the worst part of their life living in the lowest realms possible. And all this time they're sucking the energy. So, you know, this is their reward. You know, that they are callous. You know, the humans, I believe, are just an energy source to them.
Yeah, that does make sense. I definitely think that there are certain species out there that view us as food and nothing more. It's almost like we are in a giant cow pasture here on this prison planet. And there's all kinds of theories about that. You know, guys like David Icke definitely have lots of theories about the, you know, the reptilian conspiracy and whatnot. And yeah, they all sound, all the theories, you know, even the really crazy ones, there are aspects of those theories that sound legitimate or that make sense, depending on how you look at it. So essentially, they're summoning the Jinn. They're petitioning it to do a person a favor, and in return, they are offering them a victim.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's you know it's just business. It's just business. You know, sort of. But I think there has to be this free will click into it. Yeah. So you know, they can't just attack you for the sake of it. But I'm sure they could if they wanted. But I think it's easier for them if they have this free will bind with it. You know, it just makes it easier for them. Realistically, like I said, you know, if you're the average Indian and you're throwing half your wages at some guy, you want results. And
oh yeah.
But it's not just that. It's. I spoke to a gym master, and he told me of this slum boy from India, nothing going for him. You know, he would probably be dead by the time he was like 20. You know, they live on the streets. Either the disease gets them or the traffic gets them. He was a young kid, round about sort of between sort of like 5 and 7, and he kept coming to the offices of the Jinn and doing the ritual every day. Then one day he stopped coming, and the guy thought, well, you know, he's a nice kid, but obviously, you know, something's killed him, or something's happened to him. And then another guy, about the same age, started doing the same ritual. And he said to this other guy, he said, it's funny you're doing this, but you know, a few weeks ago there was another little Indian boy doing the same ritual. And he said, yes, he lives in America now. He said, what? He said, he lives in America. A film crew came, and one of the film crew went through all the hassle and adopted him.
Wow.
What he was asking for was to live in America.
Wow. That's awesome, dude. That just goes to show you how multiple this reality is, and how very real these beings are. Yeah, that's an awesome story. I have another question. A lot of people will say that Jinn and demons are the same thing, and then a lot of people I've talked to have said that they are separate classes of entities. Now, is there a difference between Jinn and demons?
Okay, right. Before I say anything, I want to sort of like say this. It's from a very good book. Science is circular. It ends where it starts, with the senses. It deals with experience, and experience is subjective. No two persons can have the same experience. However, they can write the same thing. Yeah. Now, with the Jinn, I believe the lower down Jinns can equally be demons, and they can equally be Jinn. You know, because power is their thing. But I think that your Ifrits and your Hayas, no way. You know, they have this class system among them, and they're not even going to pretend to be demons. Yeah, you know, sort of like the Shaitan, what we call the Satan, and we believe is a fallen angel, only classes himself as a Jinn. And whenever people meet the Ifrit, they always say, we are the Jinn. Yeah, now that's from their own mouths. Now, obviously, the other lower Jinns, probably who haven't got the same sort of clout, will pretend to be something else to get the energy. In the same way that somebody pretends to be, I don't know, some sort of salesperson to get money out of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you get to the top of the tree, there's no messing around. They tell you, we're the Jinn. You know, your choice.
I've always kind of felt that they were separate species. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I think they are, but I think they're also the lower down ones who can't quite get the power. They will lie to get the power, but at the top, they will introduce you. You know, whenever you read any serious reportage about the Jinn, they always tell you straight up, we're the Jinn. So you know, don't make that mistake. Yeah, they get it out the way. You know, hello, I'm a Jinn. But apparently, you know, yeah, that's where I put my money. If they're introducing themselves as a Jinn, they're not introducing themselves as demons.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. It does. And that's kind of like always how I've always felt about it, that they were indeed separate entities or separate species. So a lot of people will also say that we cannot make allies with the Jinn. That, like you were saying, it's strictly business whenever you work with them, and you better mind your P's and Q's, and you better have your shit together and know what you're doing if you're going to summon them. So is there a class of Jinn that we can make allies with that do like humans that you know of?
Well, the women Jinns are easier to deal with. Okay, the Ifrit are, if you like, the mafia. They will do deals with you. Yeah. However, I have come across many cases where you do deals with them, you get what you want, then they want more bodies. You can go on YouTube today and find people talking to the camera saying, if you want somebody killing, put the name underneath there and I will send the Ifrit to do it. Yeah? They've made their deal, but unfortunately, they've met something which is ravenous. They've met something which cannot be satisfied. And of course, they did it the easy way. They gave them what they want. And really, people are so under ambitious when it comes to wanting something. You know, sort of like, sort of, you're asking them for something they can easily do, so they're not that bothered. And I'd imagine the lower your request, the lower you are as a human being in your mind, the easier you are to manipulate, in my opinion.
No, I think you're right about that. I think humans are susceptible to just about every form of manipulation, as we can obviously see just by observing society. We are continuously being manipulated by one thing or another. So very few of us are thinking our own thoughts, in my opinion. Another question I had, and you may or may not know the answer to this, but as far as the ritual that these Jinn masters will perform, well, they will ask for a favor and then they will in turn offer a victim as payment to the Jinn. Do you know exactly how they go about offering the victim? Do they just simply name that person, or is there like a ritual where they place the photograph into the fire or something like that?
Well, from what I can understand, it's a little bit like a bank. Somebody will come and want somebody killing. Somebody will come and want a favor. So of course, if you like, you're like a Jinn Henry Kissinger. Somebody wants somebody killing, somebody wants a favor. So you that's why they always say give us 6 months. And I think it takes 6 months because they line the right deal up with the right deal, the right energy with the right energy.
That makes sense.
Because you're dealing with ultimate power. You're dealing with something which, according to all the biblical tradition, all the Quranic traditions, you're dealing with a creature, a shaitan, that wouldn't even bow before God. And there wasn't a great deal God could do about it apart from throwing down to earth. So we're dealing with somebody who's he comes with a warning. Even
Yeah.
God can handle him, Or so this is where we're at. And they're always saying they're full of pride, they're full of this, they're full of the other. I don't believe, in all honesty, people, shall we say, accidentally meet them. I think they go looking for them, and they all go looking for them with some kind of request. And once they do that, they're in the game, and there's no escape.
Yeah, I guess once you get so far down the path, there's no going back.
Absolutely, yeah.
And even if you could go back, I mean, you can't unknow something. You can't just wipe it from your memory. Once you know that this other world exists, I don't think you can ever ignore it again. And your soul will never stop screaming at you if you turn and run the other direction. And everyone that I know who has claimed to have their life destroyed irreparably by dabbling with magic, they're all people who ran the other direction whenever things got scary, and they never recovered from it. So I mean, it's like it's like an acid trip that is really intense. You're going to get to a point where you want to come down and you can't, and you have to see it through to the other side. And I think it takes a very unique individual to work these currents and take these plunges and come out on the other side and be glad that they did it, and not turn and run the other direction.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. With any magical working, you have to understand there is a point where you are no consciously aware. This is the Crowley will thing, if you like. You have only the will. And if your will is to curl up and die, unfortunately, that's what will happen. If you have the will to face the hurricane and go through that, then you will succeed. However, what we're talking about, less than 3% of magicians, in all honesty.
Yeah.
In all honesty, you're talking less than 3%, and realistically, we're not even. I know some very, very high magicians, and when they get towards the end of their life and they want to die, and they understand they're going to die, they go on to the astral, and then they face their demons. They face every mistake they've done. They face every bad demon they've ever encountered. Most people can't do it because the fear is horrific. However, to cleanse themselves so they can move to the higher level of consciousness, some will stick at it and do it. All the ones that I know that have done this, they all speak of fear beyond terror. Fear beyond terror.
Yeah.
So, unless you can do that, then I suggest you go nowhere near magic, to put it bluntly. If you cannot face fear beyond terror, then don't bother.
Yeah, and I think every magician who has truly practiced the hardcore black arts has had to face that fear beyond terror, and it's not for everyone. Not everyone comes back from it. I definitely went through something early in my practice that almost killed me, and I could describe it as fear beyond terror. It lasted for months.
Oh my God.
And, yeah. So I don't think that just anyone could come back from that. And
no, it's impossible. You have to be, you have to be will and love, because that is all you've got when you face the demon, when you face the horror, when you face that moving to the next level. All you have is will and love. If you can hold on to the will and love, you can do it. If you can't, then please don't play the game, okay?
well, that's very well said, because looking back at that point in my life, that is all that got me through that. Was my will to recover and regain my strength, and the love of my family. And I'm like, it was so bad at a point like where I was seriously wishing that I could commit suicide so that the torment would stop. but I knew that that would not save me. I knew that there was no way out, not even eating a bullet. And I was either going to remain in that weakened, tormented state for the rest of my life and end up in a mental hospital somewhere, or I was going to come out on the other side and hopefully be stronger than when I started. But yeah, I do not like to think about that period of my life. That was hell. That was pure hell. And I did a podcast a while back with JD Temple where I talk about that in depth. But yeah, I think the way you just described that is a perfect example of what it's like. You know, love and will, that is the one thing that will get you through that. The two things.
Well, like yourself, I've been through that myself, you know, and you have to, you know, sort of like, it's beyond talking about it. It's beyond talking about it. And you can either do it or you can't. It's that simple, you know. And like I said, if anybody is a serious magician listening into this, that's the only advice I would give, unless you can have complete will and complete love, then don't even play this game, in my opinion.
It's good advice. I think that we, as humans, I think we are all capable of practicing magic, but I don't think that just anyone can handle it. I've seen this over and over. Like, I like to think that we could all be magicians and we could all, you know, take control of our reality, but through working with the public or doing consultations, I've had people come to me with what I would consider to be minor problems, and you know, I'll give them instructions for a simple ritual that they can do on their own, so that they don't have to hire someone like me in order to do it. And very few of them actually take me up on that. Most of them would rather pay thousands of dollars than do a simple ritual, and that's because there's some type of barrier in our minds that I think has been put there by probably an otherworldly intelligence, that is the only purpose of that barrier is to keep us from accessing our own personal power. And it's like whenever people even think about trying, they come up against resistance. And it's not just internal resistance like fear and anxiety and the doubt and disbelief, but it's external resistance also. I don't know what to call that force. I think of it as the forces of oppression. And you know, you can describe that in a lot of different ways, but it takes something drastic to happen in the person's life to force them to smash through that initial barrier that is put there to keep them in their place. And once they do break through that dam, then the magic just floods through their life and through their very physical being. But most people will never break through that barrier because of fear, doubt, and resistance that they face. So,
may I add something to that, Garrett?
Yeah.
Okay. If I was going to describe you and magicians of your strength, I would describe it like this: expert superbike riders. Okay? You know, the big 1000s, the big 900s, yeah? Now you could give somebody a 250 Ducati, yeah? And you would think, yeah, it's okay, it's quite mild, it does what it does on the tank. If you've never driven a 250 Ducati, you'd probably have to change your pants at least 3 times. Because, but the guy who rides the superbike will think, well, I could do another sort of maybe 800 liters on this thing, you know, to make it do something. But the person who's just stepping onto the machine for the first time, or the first person who is going on to into the magic ritual, realistically, in my opinion, because you know you guys know what you're doing, it's like, I've never ridden a motorcycle before, and I've got this 250 Ducati in front of me. He can ride a 1000. The minute they drop the clutch, they're probably going to meet God, and they'll give it back to you and say, "Please, I'll just take the car home." You know, and that's. And I think that's the trouble. You get so used to the power, even something that you think is small and inconsiderate. You know, just inconsistent with what your belief system, somebody else will think, oh my God, I'm not getting on that ever again. And it's just, it's that simple.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good analogy too. And yeah, I think sometimes I'll give people instructions and I'm sitting there thinking like, this is simple, this is not a big deal, and they're just like, oh my God, I cannot do this. So yeah, I'd probably need to take that into consideration also.
you go out on the Ducati and come back and say, excuse me, can you put a turbo on it, please?
Absolutely. You know, another thing I've noticed in doing ritual with people, just a lot of my clients come to me just through word of mouth. I mean, when it gets out that you're a practicing magician, then everyone who knows you or knows of you is going to come to you whenever their life is up shit creek. And so what I like to, whenever someone comes to me personally, you know, I'll sit down with them in the circle and do the ritual with them. I usually don't even charge them anything if they're going to sit down and do the ritual with me. If they want me to do it all for them, then yeah, they're going to pay me. But a lot of them will elect to participate, you know, to do their own ritual while I'm essentially operating the ceremony. And I've noticed with first timers, people who have never done any type of magic before, and a lot of times they're very skeptical, like they're not sure how real it is, you know, because they've never experienced it. That is when the craziest shit happens. Like the craziest phenomena is whenever you have a first timer in there who is skeptical. I mean, that's when, you know, demons appear in the smoke, or that's when, you know, the fire explodes at the conclusion of the conjuration. And I've had people take off running from rituals before. You know, like they sit down, they're already kind of nervous, they don't really know what to expect, but they're pretty sure this isn't real. And then poof, there's a demon staring them in the face through the smoke manifestation, and they take off running. And I'm like, no, that's the worst thing you can do. Don't run. So yeah, I feel like those manifestations that happen in those instances, that is the spirit world slapping them in the face to say, yes, we are real and this is serious, you know. And maybe we need that but so that they know what they're getting into before it's too late. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, you know, you guys are the super bike riders. You know, these guys should stick with the push bikes, realistically. You know, end of story. You know, it's you know, it's that big a difference. It really is. I've had the same problem myself, but to a lesser degree. But you know, I understand where you are. But I think maybe you should just step back and say, this is my job. You know, realistically.
Yeah, maybe definitely in some cases, if not several. But yeah, it's you know, and I once in a while I'll have someone come to me, you know, and it might be someone that lives in my hometown that saw me on YouTube or something like that, and they're like, oh, I really want to learn what you do, you know, please teach me. And you know, assuming that the person does not give me like the religious terrorist vibe or something like that, then I'll usually just be like, okay, you know, we'll, you know, plan to meet here at this time and we'll do a ritual. And I would say probably less than half of them actually follow through with it. Like when it comes down to actually meeting J.S. Garrett out in the woods to, you know, sacrifice a chicken or something, they don't actually show up. So once in a while, someone surprises me. I'm pleasantly surprised, and you give them the tools to practice on their own, and then you get to watch them, you know, climb their own mountain. And that's always really cool. But it is a very small percentage of people that come to this out of curiosity and actually pick up the sword and wield it, you know. So yeah.
Oh, well, like I said, realistically, you're talking what, 6%, and out of that 6%, you're really lucky 3% who are what you call true masters. However, as you know yourself, the price of mastery is steep. It's steep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and probably people feel that at the beginning. Once again, you know, so it could well be something as powerful as the Jinn. You know, if you have an elite club, you only want to deal with elite minds and elite people, and perhaps it's their kind of, if you like, selection. We don't know. You know, there are so many things I don't know, seriously. The one thing I do know, this will give you a laugh. Before talking to you today, I couldn't put my headphone socket in the computer. And I thought, this is strange. I tipped the computer up, and a little stone, just the size of the headphone socket, fell out. That would be a child Jinn having a little bit of fun.
That's funny.
Yeah. Seriously, that was real. And I thought, why is it not going in? And I did it, and it was literally the little tiny stone was just big enough to go inside it. How it got in there, you tell me.
Yeah, how does that get in there? That's funny. Yeah, I do often experience a lot of electronics malfunctioning, doing podcasts and filming. Last night I did a really insane ritual for a client, and at the highest level of intensity towards the conclusion of the ritual, the camera malfunctions. Totally just cuts off, and that's frustrating because it's something, you know, magic and electronics don't really mix. So whenever you're pulsating a large amount of energy around this ritual space, it's going to cause electronics to malfunction a good bit of the time. Luckily, I have an excellent camera operator that is always right there with a secondary camera to turn on, and that way we hopefully don't miss anything. But the technical difficulties is one of my biggest challenges in doing this professionally.
Well, I mean, obviously, when you're dealing with energies outside of yourself, you are pulling these energies into that space. A friend of mine had a very embarrassing moment. He was doing some hemisync meditation, and his wife, who is a very strict Christian, couldn't work out why this massive banging was coming from. And she thought, well, he's meditating, I won't do it. Perhaps he's snoring. And after the meditation, she said, what were you doing in there? You were just banging, 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 banging. He says, no, I was just laid there listening to the music, you know, listening to the hemisync. So, you know, this is what happens. You pull this energy through, it's got to go somewhere. And I think, you know, if you're doing very high rituals, it makes perfect sense that it's gonna blow. Sorry, you can't pull energy. It's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are certain spirits that I work with that I cannot film. Some entities don't mind at all. I think they like being filmed. But there's one in particular, Sun Talak. It's a spirit that I offer a wealth and prestige right through Become a Living God, where I work specifically with Sun Talak. And I cannot even take photographs during the ritual. I've tried to film 2 separate rituals with this spirit. Each time, the minute I began the conjuration to summon him, the cameras fried, like they cut off and they never worked again. There was a point, you know, and so after that I started taking like before and after pictures of the ritual, just for proof, you know, and satisfaction of proof that the ritual did take place. And I've noticed that if I step, even after I conclude the ritual, you know, I don't dismiss him. He hangs out until he's ready to go. You know, that sacrifice is burning, and he's not going to leave until he has consumed every ounce of that energy. And one time, shortly after I closed out the ritual, I got my cell phone out of my truck, and it had 100% battery. And so I turn the camera on and I step into the circle. I want to take a picture of the chicken on the fire for the client. And I watched that battery go from 100% to 0, and the phone died in my hand before I could ever snap a picture. And I mean, there's no explanation for that. I mean, that's happened multiple times now. And just certain spirits, I think, emit a magnetic field that really disrupts electronics. But in this case, it seems to literally suck the energy out of the battery. Like, I have to park my vehicle at least a couple of 100 feet away from the ritual site, otherwise the battery in my truck will go dead just from being too close. So yeah, we really don't have any idea how powerful these spirits actually are, I think.
Yeah, have you come across the Sagori in India? The
No,
Sagori, right, they're very, very interesting. They cover themselves in ash of the dead bodies. When the bodies are burning, they sit round the bodies and they absorb the energy. It's such a problem that people, if they have somebody young die, they cover them in plastic so they can't see how old they are, because they just sit round and suck what they call the prana, the life energy, off the burning body, and they absorb it.
wow.
And they've done this for thousands and thousands of years. So these guys know how to do it the other way. They can absorb the body off it. Interestingly, a friend of mine is a top engineer, and he was brought into a house which was allegedly possessed. He didn't know what it was. He went into the house and he had his meters with him, and he said it was a very strange atmosphere. And he said, "Why do you think it's possessed?" And he said, "Well, it's sucking a lot of energy." "Well, have you disconnected the electricity?" And he said, when they pulled the thing back, nothing was connected, yet this house was sucking enough electricity for 3 houses.
Wow.
And they ended up knocking it down in the end because they couldn't cure the problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you explain that? You know, that's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting. I think I would have wanted to purchase that house if I would have come across it. But
Yeah, but he said that when he walked in it was very foreboding. It was very, very powerful, and the fact that it was still sucking electricity off the grid, you know, was he was an engineer. Of course, he didn't want to know anymore. They just eventually the council just knocked it down. They didn't want to play with it. So yeah, it's this phenomena can cross planes. You know, so you know,
yeah, I really think that there's really nothing that we can't do. There's nothing that's not possible to achieve. We just have to figure out the right technique in order to do so. You know, and so much of that knowledge has been lost over the centuries. If you look back to our ancestors who built the pyramids, like, we can't even comprehend how they moved and cut the stones. You know, like, we can't even do that today. So I'm always obsessed with trying to rediscover ancient knowledge. And really, the only way that you can do that is by tapping into the God consciousness, the Akashic record, whatever you want to call it, communing with spiritual entities if you can get one to speak to you. And then once you receive a piece of information, you just have to experiment. You have to test it out and see if it works. And if you genuinely get it from an entity like a Jinn or a demon or even an angelic, then it will usually surprise you quite pleasantly at how well it works. So I always encourage people to follow spirits and listen to the instructions they receive, because you're probably tapping into something very real.
Oh, you're absolutely tapping into something real. I mean, if you read the sort of mystics like Siri, Nisargadatta, Maharaj, they always tell you that the world essentially is what you want it to be. The only thing that forms your world is you. So, of course, if you're a magician, you can form the world to how you want it forming. Now, they don't teach this in when you go to ashrams. These are tried and tested philosophies, which once again are only used by maybe 2 or 3% of the so-called gurus, and they understand the game, and the game is essentially whatever you concentrate, whatever you work towards, then essentially that is your reality. But of course, talking about it and doing it are two entirely different subjects. Once again, we're only down to 3% of the people who can actually do this.
Yeah, that's it's always harder to actually do it than it is to simply talk about it. And that's why we see so many armchair magicians arguing over different things that no one can ever prove or disprove because they never actually put the knowledge to the test. So I mean, my hat is off to everyone that gets their hands dirty and does put it to the test. So I mean, it takes a lot of bravery, I think, to step into the darkness and come out the other side with something tangible and something valuable that you can share with others. So
I think that's really important, because I don't I don't object to anybody doing anything, but I think the thing that is really important, whatever you do, it should heighten yourself in the direction you want to go. It shouldn't pull you to somewhere where you don't want to go. It should make you a better person, should make you more harmonious, it should make you stronger. If it does that, then I don't see any problems. But what I do see problems of is people who tend to want this chaos, tend to want this something which is not harmonious. And if that's what they want, that's great. But whenever I've seen people like this, they don't seem to develop, and if anything, they regress. So I think that's the other side of it as well. The ego is so dangerous. It can make you want something which is completely destructive. We see it all the time with gambling, cocaine, drugs, sex, and I think we see it with magic as well. I think if the ego is not under control, then essentially you're no better off than a cocaine head.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I agree with you that magic is like a drug. It's definitely my drug of choice, and I'm always chasing the next high. That's just being honest. I'm always looking for the next big breakthrough, and we do see ego become the downfall of many magicians, and an unchecked ego will destroy you. And unfortunately, people, they get a taste of power. They do a few rituals and they get the desired result. And then that head just swells massively. And next thing you know, they're losing everything and self-destructing. But it does not even occur to them that they're doing so. You see people get really blinded by their own ego, and I think ego can be a strength or a weakness. And if it's in check, then it's definitely a strength, because you know your self-worth, you know what you're capable of. But you have to be honest. You need an honest ego. Something that is not fooling you into thinking you are something that you're not. And when it gets overinflated, then it can certainly be your downfall. When it gets overinflated, it becomes a weakness rather than a strength.
I 100% agree with everything that you're saying. I mean, the only people I've seen mess themselves up with magic have followed your formula to the letter. So they don't detract from it.
Yeah. It's good to stay humble, and that if you constantly question yourself every day, then that's a good way to keep yourself in check, I think. And I don't, I'm always I try not to second guess myself to the point where it's counterproductive, but at least once a day I try to stop and analyze what it is I'm doing or thinking about doing from a third-party perspective, and I say, "Have you lost your mind, JS?" And if I can sit there and still rationalize what I'm doing, then I'm good. But if I stop and I'm like, yeah, I might have got on the crazy train today, then I take a few steps back and reevaluate.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, in psychology, they would, or counseling, they would say that that was working through your process. And I think that really helps to stop the ego turning into a ravenous monster. And, you know, and realistically, that is such an important part of both magical work and your own work as a human being. You know, in my opinion, sort of all the highest magicians I've met, they are humble, they're willing to learn, and they are not, if you like, over-committed. Everything is in balance. You know, they won't overface themselves. They grow steadily. They grow stronger, and that's more or less all of them. Where the lunatics, well, you meet them every day.
Yes, especially if you have Facebook. Like, man, they are coming out of the woodwork.
Well, I think Facebook on some days has direct access to the idiot farm.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, you know, so unfettered access. You know, I won't deal with it. But yeah, which is really good.
Absolutely. Well, sir, we have we've hit right at an hour here, so we are just about out of time. I try to keep these things right at an hour, because if we make them too long, then no one will watch them. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap up this podcast. Is there any final thoughts on the Jinn, or anything else that you would like to leave us with?
I think we've covered everything on the Jinn. I've learned a great deal from talking to you. Namaste.
Oh, likewise. Thank you. Thank you. You're very knowledgeable in your field. And yeah, I'd love to have you back again in the future to discuss more about this, if you'd like.
Yeah. I mean, and yeah, it'd be a pleasure. You know, it would really be a pleasure. And like I said, namaste. Thank you very much for our conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. You have an excellent night. And yeah, we will talk again soon. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll be dropping more podcasts in the near future. Stay tuned. Thank you.